Okay, so Michal, you're up to lead the meditation?
Yes. Uh, verse 36. In brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness to accomplish others' good. This is the practice of Bodhisattva. And also in Hebrew, בקצרה, להיות מודע ודרוך באשר תהיה ותעשה, ולבחון את מצב תודעתך ולשאוף תמיד לטובת הזולת, זה התרגול של ידי הבודה.
Maybe we could start with a few just thoughts that you've been having about emptiness and the sevenfold analysis. Any kind of hanging thoughts before we go into any new material, just so that the people that aren't here don't miss out. So I sent you the meditation on the sevenfold analysis. You maybe have had time to do it, maybe not. But how did it go now that we've talked about it a bit, to actually then sit with it? Was there some sort of meaning and connection, at least with some of the points?
Maybe, Yönten, I was thinking so that every conception, every time we use a conception, obviously it's a creature of the mind. The conception is a creature of the mind.
Yep.
So it helps me to understand that every time that I use a concept, there is a dependent on the subject and the object. It's not only the object, and it's my mind that creates the phenomena, or I don't know what to say. So, but it includes all the human phenomena, not all the phenomena, not only the self.
Exactly.
Except direct perception, but I don't know what is. So I can't imagine it. But every time that
yeah, I mean, all of our conceptions are, have a veil over them too, which means that on one hand, you can't really trust anything, and on the other hand, you have to trust something or you can't function. So it's a difficult kind of paradox, because that all of your conceptions have this veil of ignorance. The way you think of yourself, okay, but the way you think of others, okay. Also how you think of your house and your environment and your choices and your opinions and everything. And then it's easy to become paralyzed and not know how to function if everything's illusory, or to just brush that aside and just do the best you can with what you've got, but in the background kind of go, oh, everything's an illusion, and it can make you a little unsettled. And that unsettled feeling is, I think, quite useful as long as it doesn't go too far. As long as you don't lose the ability to trust your inner wisdom. And that's where people kind of move from going in the right direction with analyzing emptiness to going too far into, I have to question everything so much so that I can't move at all. It's like there is a level of conventional wisdom that we have and we can trust and we can rely on and feel confident about. And if we start to second guess that too much, we'll be stuck or crazy or chaotic, and So exactly the way you're thinking is good. And a few steps beyond that can lead to a bit of more progress and more crazy, both, depending on the day. And I remember there was a retreat that I led a few years ago where we were doing a lot of meditations on emptiness, and someone said, how do I know what is my inner wisdom? You know, it's a good question, right? How do I know what is my inner wisdom? What is the inner guru? What do I know, what I can rely on so far? And, you know, the fact that they were asking this question pointed to the fact that they were already starting to get a little bit wobbly, you know, that there was something that was, in a way, too aggressively confronted, and they were losing the ability to kind of make everyday rational decisions. So I think that whenever we're doing this, if we can come back to what we know to be true in the conventional, that is so simple, but when you meditate on emptiness a lot, it can start to get a little bit ambiguous. You know, things like love is always a good idea, compassion is always a good idea. If my common sense says this is too fast, or if my common sense says this is not practical for me yet, it's okay to confront that and challenge that, but also to listen to it and, you know, meet it. And that balance of making sure the mind hasn't gone into some sort of agitated relationship with wisdom. Because even if the content is correct, if the mind approaching it is agitated, then it's become a kind of a tangled, afflicted dance again. And the mind can turn any medicine into poison, you know, if we're not careful. So for most people, it just gets hard and they vague out and stop thinking deeply because it's hard. But for some people, it can go into some unsettled mental state. So just kind of naming that to hopefully avoid it. I'm guessing everyone here is mentally sound enough, but we never know what kind of like latent stuff kind of can start to get touched when we go into emptiness. And so to keep coming back to that trust of the inner guru, the inner stability that's able to hear wisdom and resonate with wisdom, you know, to be able to trust yourself, even though you know that self isn't exactly how you think it to be. Even though that self has elements of mistakenness, still there is something trustworthy there, you know. What kind of thoughts are coming to your mind when you do this sevenfold analysis? Thoughts about what is a valid basis? Thoughts about what is my relationship to how I view it? You know, what are the aggregates? What are the aggregates of the aggregates of the aggregates of the aggregates? You know. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says sometimes when you meditate on emptiness, you can have this kind of feeling of everything breaking into pieces, not breaking into nothing, but like breaking into pieces. And that's not quite subtle enough, but you know, it's something indicating that there's good movement happening in the mind. Other things that can happen is that you start to have kind of like an inner wind congestion, and you start to feel like you've got a bit of tightness at the heart center. You know, like a stick or a rock at your heart where it gets a bit too tight. Maybe we would call that anxiety, generally speaking, but it can happen when you meditate on emptiness, that you're searching for the object of negation, and then you feel like you found it because there's this like hard lump at your heart, or there's this like stick at your heart or in your stomach. And what you've done is the analysis has become too pressurized, and you've kind of congested your inner energetic system. And so when that happens, the advice is just to open back out into some like clarity of mind meditation and allow yourself to connect back with the spaciousness, and then do the meditation again once you've relaxed again. So these are the sort of things that can start to happen. Yeah, sometimes it can be very blissful and very spacious and kind of a relief. It can be a relief to lose the object of negation, to find it and then not find it. It can be a great relief.
Maybe I will share with two associations that I had again when I read it in advance to this seminar today. I remember when I first studied in the university the introductory seminar to logic and the whole kind of syllogisms that made me crazy about it. I couldn't figure out all this kind of cognitive manipulation. I thought that I'm not fit to it. Somehow, in my intelligence is not proper to this kind of work, of the cognitive work that is needed. And I left it. I loved philosophy a lot, but this type or this section in philosophy, I really left it aside. Until many years later, when I came acquainted to the quantum physics concerning the resonates ideas with psychoanalytic ideas of the cohesion perspective, I came back. I returned to this way of thinking, and I want to remind you what Niels Bohr, one of the renowned physicists in the quantum field, once said in 1926 or something. He said, "When do you understand that you are really understand what does it mean, the quantum reality? When you become dizzy. And then you understand that there is something dizziness that is the inner understanding of it. And if you are not afraid from this dizziness, then you can come out of it to clarity. But first of all, these 7 or 9 or 10 items of cognitive work is really dizzying. It's make you not psychotic, but you understand that you can't understand it. And somehow, when you really understand it cognitively, maybe it's a sign that it's already not cognitively. When you are dizzying, then it's cognitively only. That's why you don't understand it perfectly, or all the neat and the tiny elements of this. So don't be afraid of this dizziness. Try it again and again and again and again. It's a practice. Don't try to understand it. Practice it. It's a kind of a game. How do you say machboim? Hide?
Hide and seek.
Hide and seek, yeah. Don't be afraid of it coming very chamakmak, evasive or no?
Elusive, evasive.
Yeah. And be able to feel stupid. It's really hard.
And quite freeing, you know, it's quite freeing to feel stupid, especially if you identify as not stupid. It's quite freeing to get to be stupid again. This is where I realize how much merit plays a part in how we understand things, because I've met so many people that understand emptiness to the same or a deeper degree than myself, and might have lower intelligence, and people that have higher seeming intelligence than me that just do not get it. You know, so to me, it's also very much about merit, how much momentum and mental energy has gone before you met these thoughts, but was going in this direction. You know, so because sometimes when people first hear about emptiness, their immediate response is joy, relief, connection, familiarity. And some people's immediate reaction is fear, confusion, disillusionment, etc. And of course, all of that could be probably explained psychologically within the context of one life. But there's been a lot of times when I think that is an odd reaction from that particular person. You know, they're so smart, they're so sharp about this and this and this, but then we get to this topic and there's just all these barriers. And then here's this other person that we don't think of as particularly bright, and yet they just get it right away. It's not all about intelligence. It's so much about approach and about merit and about repetition. And I think as Ranan says, don't think about it too much. Just try it, or just do it, or just practice it. It's a little bit like Tantra in that way of you can understand to a degree, but then at some point you have to just kind of let go and just do what is said and see what happens. You know, you trust the Dharma enough to just kind of let go and experiment, because you know that so far the things that you've tried within the Dharma have worked well. when you've practiced patience, you become more patient, you know? So you just kind of trust that this process is leading to something useful, and you just kind of let go into it, see what happens. And that is a bit the way we approach Tantra as well. We understand enough to start, but if we had to understand absolutely everything before we started, we would never start. So, you know, slowly and gradually, this stuff becomes clearer and clearer. And, you know, I added the sevenfold analysis because this relationship with logic is really good for us. And then we're adding the Heart Sutra because it's a slightly different way of using logic and reasoning, although it's a similar format. It's more of a story. It's more relatable, and it's also, it contains a lot of the teachings you've already had. So it kind of like brings the things you already know all together in one kind of bite-sized chunk in a really beautiful way. So meeting the Heart Sutra again and again becomes like meeting an old friend. Yeah. Yeah, Mickey?
I wonder if when we read great thinkers in psychoanalysis like Coate and others, Winnicott also, I think, if they knew this or feel in their bones this nature of the mind. Coate with his notion of idealization in his article on courage, when he thinks that man is more than his body. He's not his body, his spirit. And when you, Anan, talked about playing, so I couldn't avoid to think about Winnicott and his book, Playing in Reality. I think that in his paradoxical thinking, Winnicott also somehow knew about this emptiness. Perhaps I read it in him when I know more a little about emptiness, but it's interesting. I think also Freud, when he thinks about projection, all his notion of projection and the movement about projection or reality, they're thinking something in reality and about human, what is human, what is the man, what is reality. I think that for me, Buddhism helps a lot in rereading psychoanalysis.
Yeah, and whether they had those connotations in their teachings or not, if we bring it to it, then those teachings become richer. You know, it's the same as like I sometimes like to read Greek philosophers, and you know, whether or not they actually come to the conclusion of emptiness or they're just approaching it, I read emptiness into it and it's a richer experience. So it almost doesn't even matter, you know, or reading, you know, Stephen Hawking's, you know, Black Holes and Baby Universes is, you know, such an interesting book, but it's even more interesting if you know about emptiness. And yeah, so.
Also, Heraclitus, you know, Heraclitus, the Western philosophy, when he speaks that we don't get twice into the same river. He's talking about impermanence.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, in one way it can be enriching for our practice and help kind of flesh it out. And in another way it can be possibly problematic because we think that we've gone deep enough and there's still a few more layers yet to penetrate. You know, so that's, you know, that's the difficulty. But I think that gradually it becomes clear that there are still aspects of inherent existence that we grasp onto despite intellectually knowing better. And, you know, I think we're probably all at that point by now. Despite knowing better, there are still even intellectually aspects that we grasp onto as this is definitely inherently existent or this is definitely me. You know, so hopefully those releasing processes can continue. So the verse related to the perfection of wisdom is verse 30 in 37 Practices on page 5. So if you want to have a look at that, Togme Zangpo says, since the 5 perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, along with skillful means, cultivate the wisdom, which does not conceive the 3 spheres as real. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So since the 5 perfections without wisdom cannot bring perfect enlightenment, the invitation is to bring wisdom into each of the other perfections. So practice generosity while remembering wisdom, practice ethics while remembering wisdom, practice patience, joyous effort and concentration while remembering wisdom. And then you're working on both sides or both wings of the path, the method side and the wisdom side. And to be a fully fledged perfection, it needs bodhicitta, and each perfection needs all the other perfections in it. And I think that you all know this. The added element in this verse that I think is very useful and functional in terms of your everyday thinking about emptiness is, which does not conceive the 3 spheres as real. The 3 spheres being agent, action, object, right? The 3 spheres of emptiness. And if you're remembering that these 3 conceptions are not inherently existent, do not exist from their own side by way of their own nature, those 3 are the kind of, in a way, filtration system through which to try and see all the reactivity of our life. Yeah, to say, I, the agent, am lacking inherent existence because my actions lack inherent existence because what I do towards what is impacted lacks inherent existence because, and then you release the tension around opinions, conclusions, judgments. So these 3 spheres, they're a way to, end every meditation, but they're also a way to end every activity and start every activity in a sense, because it keeps you from becoming concrete. Yeah.
These 3 spheres, do you negate them together, or each and every one of them separately? In meditation, and not in meditation, as you say now, that everything we do or think or being part of, or do you suggest that we negate them separately or all together?
I think in terms of daily life, you will let go of your affliction quicker if you go through each of them individually. I think if you're not particularly reactive, if you're not in a bad space, if you're having a generally good day, just connecting back to what you understand of them is enough, kind of as a whole, just in general, everything's empty of inherent existence. For example, the 3 spheres, doing the dishes, but if you're, feeling very attached and clinging towards something, someone, some situation, or very averse towards it, giving yourself the mental pause to say, who needs this? Who's averse to this? What are you averse to? What is the impact of? And to kind of work yourself through analytically, you can almost feel like, say it's something you're attached to, you can almost feel your mental fingers release one by one and let go of it. Or if you're like blocking and pushing, you can kind of feel yourself go, oh, okay. So functionally, I do walk myself through them one by one personally in my own kind of practice. When I'm feeling particularly reactive, I usually start with who needs this or who can't have this? Who is it? Me, like where is it that needs this? Who is it that needs this? What is it that is needed? What do I think it will do? And which each of those, it kind of dissolves into emptiness because you realize from its own side, it doesn't have any of those characteristics in and of themselves. So, you might say to yourself, I need the traffic to smooth out in order to get where I need to go. And because that's not happening, I am stressed. Definitely that's why I'm stressed. And then you take a step back and you say, is traffic inherently stressful? Have there been times where it wasn't? Millions of times where it wasn't stressful. My need to get where I need to go on time as a pressure system driving me, is that necessary, functional, real? No. Is the world going to end if I don't get there on time? No. It's very basic, but you can do it with these basic things. And then you say, who is it that thinks they have to be timely? What identification do I have with a being on time person, or with the being there at the time I want to be so I can relax for a few minutes before I have to interact, or what is my attachment to needing to be there at that time, et cetera, et cetera. So you're just kind of using kind of what you already do to settle down, but in a more structured way. Agent is empty. Why? Because it dependently arises in this way. Action is empty. Why? Because it dependently arises in that way. Object is empty. Why? Because it dependently arises in these ways. You don't have to think of all the ways, just a few of them is enough for you to let go. But it does help you let go. And maybe you already have experience of that a little bit. But does it make sense how you're trying to remember that the 3 spheres are empty, and that can help the everyday release?
I think it is. But still, I have to be there on time. It's clear how you ask yourself these questions and how it makes you ease a little bit, but still, I have to be there on time. It doesn't change that.
But it changes your anxiety about it. So arriving late isn't now you blowing into wherever you need to go, full of tension, anxiety, stress, and annoyance. It's you saying, sorry, I'm late, and getting on with your life. So the outer structure of the life doesn't necessarily change that much, but because your reaction to it is so different, your life is fundamentally changed. When we are over-identified with the story of necessity, whatever is confronting that story of necessity makes our current agitation twice as agitating, and we often inflict that agitation on everyone around us. We know this, yeah? This is just, this is life. This is what we're doing all the time. And so if you can say, this is not what I expected and this is not what I wanted, and that fact has nothing to do with my level of happiness, contentment, and well-being. Just because it's not what I wanted or what I expected doesn't actually have the relationship to my peace and happiness that I've allowed it to have. And maybe immediately, intellectually convincing myself of that will not be enough. But if I hang on to my intellectual understanding long enough, the seed of suffering will finish and the next seed to ripen will be happiness. And so give it a minute and a happiness seed will kick in. It's just there's that lag time with the conditions you're creating to nurture the new seed and the current seed finishing. So the current seed will still need to finish. You're already starting to suffer. That's why you're saying to yourself, I need to meditate. So that you can't immediately stop suffering just by thinking, but by thinking in the correct way, the duration of your suffering finishes much quicker. And then you've created a condition for a positive seed to ripen. And so then, 10 minutes later, you'll be quite happy. And the fact of your lateness won't color your whole day, which it so easily could if you'd kind of gotten invested in the story. Then everything else reinforces why this is a stressful day, and you believe it, and it becomes so. Yeah, Nikki.
I think that there is a phase here in human nature that people will come in time because of their concern for others, because of their responsibility, not because they are haunted by feeling guilty or anxious. So I think it's a place of maturation, perhaps.
Well, so you say, but I think that there's multiple things happening, yeah. Right, so you say. Like, we're all very altruistic, friendly people who want to be on time and be polite and caring. Of course, that goes without saying. But then there's our identity that thinks of ourselves as an altruistic, sweet and caring person who is always on time. And that is why there is agitation. Yeah, it's the identification with, not the ideal. The ideal is fine, but the identification with then becomes another point of ego friction, right? Yeah. Just to gently confront that. Sigala, you had something? Yeah.
Yes. I'm continue with Yael question, and it connects to what I said before. In the Hebrew translation to the 3 spheres is the 3 conception.
And it doesn't
I
have
don't
any
know.
kind of sense of rounds or anything like
Three
that.
conceptions: the subject, the object, and the action.
Yeah.
So every phenomenon, I'm thinking of all the three together, as Yael says, because every phenomena is מורכבת, how do you say מורכבת? בנויה, מורכבת, תעזרו לי.
Composed of,
Okay.
compounded.
Compounded with every phenomena, with the object. The phenomena is not inherently existent, okay? Existence, but it's compounded with the three. The
Agent, action, object.
the object, the focal object, or I don't know, the mind, the subject, and the action of the mind. So I was thinking of this, all the three together as a way to emptiness, because
Yeah, absolutely. That's completely accurate as well. It's just in terms of on any given day what's going to get you there. So you can pull them apart and do them individually or see them together, because of course even to say agent lacks inherent existence. There can only be an agent if there is an action, you know. So even to name those three categories is showing the dualistic nature of the mind, isn't it? Yeah, I'm just talking in terms of functionality. You know, it's like, what am I most invested, which sphere has the truest story from the perspective of my ignorance? You know, from the perspective of my ignorance, usually the agent has the truest story, which usually means it's the falsest story, but sometimes the action has the truest story, and I have to unpack why I think that action is as I describe it to myself in and of itself from its own side. So I'm, you know, basically I'm just trying to cut through the story of agent, action, object using logic, using humor, using experience. And then, you know, then the whole premise of the three also related to each other shows itself as well. It's a very useful technique in life, because sometimes when we're learning about emptiness, we might be really good at landing on, you know, the emptiness of one of those three, but not necessarily remembering the whole picture. And, you know, if we were to think about like the perfection of generosity, to be the perfection of generosity, of course, it needs to be imbued with bodhicitta, but you need to remember that you, the gift giver, the gift, and the person receiving it all lack inherent existence. Good, easy. But what happens is that if the person doesn't like your gift or rejects your gift or doesn't validate the fact that you got it, if you haven't thought about emptiness, you're much more likely to be angry at them for not appreciating your generosity. If you've remembered emptiness, then you think, oh, all right, from my perspective, that was an excellent gift. From their perspective, it was not significant. Then now I'm not mad, right? Because I haven't over-identified with whatever piece that I naturally over-identify with. Do you know what I mean? You know, similarly with any of the perfections, if you're remembering agent, action, object being empty, as you proceed along the path of virtue, then you don't also over-identify as a virtuous person who is doing virtuous things and turn that whole thing into poison. You think, I'm doing a good thing, and then someone else says, I didn't like it. Then you're mad, right? As simple as that every day. Yeah, don't you appreciate me? No. You know, fight, done. So emptiness will save you from many arguments and wrinkles. Okay, so anyway, highlight the three spheres. That's the pith, I think, of this wisdom verse, and also that all of the other perfections need wisdom with them. Yeah, so that's the pith of that. So then going more in depth into the perfection of wisdom, we're going to look at the Heart Sutra. So the English is on page 57 and the Hebrew is on page 59. And so Ranan's going to read it in Hebrew just because that's more friendly. Okay, kind sir, please proceed.
כך שמעתי באחד הזמנים. פעם שהה הבודה בפסגת הנשרים, במקום מושבו של המלך, ועמו קהילה קדושה וגדולה של נזירים. וכן קהילה קדושה וגדולה של בודיסטבות. אז שקע המבורך בהגייה של ריכוז על מה שמכונה בלימוד של הדרמה מודעות למה שעמוק. ובאותו הזמן שקע גם הבודיסטווה הגדול, אבלוקיטשוורה הנעלה, ריבון רב עוצמה, בהגייה עמוקה על שלמות החוכמה. וראה בשלמות כי 5 המצבורים של אדם ריקים לחלוטין מכל טבע משל עצמם. או אז, בכוחו של הבודה, פנה הנזיר הזוטר שריפוטרה אל הבודיסטווה הגדול אבלוקיטשוורה הנעלה, ריבון רב עוצמה, וכך לא שאל. איזה הוא האופן בו צריכים לתרגל בן או בת של המשפחה האצילה, החפצים לעסוק בתרגול המעמיק של שלמות החוכמה? וכך השיב הבודיסטווה הגדול, אבלוקיטשוורה הנעלה, ריבון רב עוצמה, לנזיר הזוטר שריפוטרה. או שריפוטרה, בן או בת של המשפחה האצילה, החפצים לעסוק בתרגול המעמיק של שלמות החוכמה, חייבים תחילה לתפוס בשלמות, כי 5 המצבורים של אדם ריקים לחלוטין מכל טבע משל עצמם. הצורה היא ריקה, הריקות היא צורה. הריקות אינה נפרדת מן הצורה, ואף הצורה אינה נפרדת מן הריקות. כך גם התחושות, יכולת ההבחנה, הגורמים המנטליים והמודעות, כל אלו ריקים. וכך שריפוטרה, כל התופעות הן ריקות, נעדרות הן כל תכונות, הן אינן מתחילות ואינן פוסקות, הן רבב בן ואינן מתנקות מרבב, הן אינן פוחתות ואינן מתגברות. משום כך שריפוטרה, בריקות אין צורה, אין תחושות, אין יכולת הבחנה, אין גורמים מנטליים ואין מודעות. אין עין, אין אוזן, אין אף, אין לשון, אין גוף, אין תודעה. אין צורה, אין צליל, אין ריח, אין טעם, אין שום חפץ לחוש ואין כל תופעה. אין מרכיב של ראייה ואין מרכיב של מודעות של ראייה, וכך הלאה, עד להיעדר המרכיב של תודעה והיעדר המרכיב של מודעות של תודעה. אין בורות, אין חיסול הבורות, וכך הלאה עד להיעדר של זקנה ושל מוות, והיעדר החיסול של זקנה ושל מוות. אין סבל, אין מקור לסבל, אין סיום הסבל ואין דרך לסיומו של הסבל. אין חוכמה, אין הישג, ואין היעדר כל הישג. וכך שריפוטרה, משום שאין מה להשיג, הבודיסטוות שוהים, תוך שהם מסתמכים על שלמות החוכמה, וזה מטהר מתודעתם כל רבב ומשחרר אותם מכל פחד. הם זונחים לחלוטין כל השקפה שגויה, ומגיעים ליעד הסופי של נירוונה. כך גם כל הבודות שבכל 3 הזמנים, תוך הסתמכות על שלמות החוכמה, הם מגיעים להארה מלאה לחלוטין שאין למעלה ממנה, למצבו המושלם של הבודה. זוהי אם כן המנטרה של שלמות החוכמה, המנטרה של המודעות הגדולה, המנטרה של זה שנשגבו מכל, המנטרה ששווה לה זה אשר לשוויון אין דומה, לשוויו אין דומה. המנטרה אשר מרגיעה לחלוטין כל סבל שיש בה נמצא, דענה כנכונה שכן אינה מחזיבה. זה דברה של המנטרה של שלמות החוכמה. תאייתה, גתה גתה, פרה גתה, פרה סם גתה בודיסוהה. או שריפוטרה. זהו האופן בו צריך הבודיסטווה הגדול לתרגל את שלמות החוכמה לעומקה. אז נאור הבודה מהגייתו, ופנה אל הבודיסטווה הגדול אבלוקיטשוורה הנעלה ריבון רב עוצמה. כך נאה, הוא ברך את דבריו. כך נאה, כך נאה, או בן המשפחה האצילה. כך הדבר, אכן כך, בדיוק כפי שהורית. כך יש לתרגל את שלמות החוכמה לעומקה. כל מי שיהלכו אל הכך, שמחים גם הם בדבריך. ומשכך הבודה אמר, אלצו בליבם הנזיר הזוטר שריפוטרה, הבודיסטווה הגדול, אבלוקiteshvara הנעלה, ריבון רב עוצמה, ועימם גם כל הקהילה. כן אלצו כל בני תבל, האלים, האנשים, האלים למחצה והרוחות, ושיבחו ברמה את אשר הבודה הורה. בכך תמה הסוטרה של המהיאנה, הידועה בשם הבלתי מנוצחת, הלב של שלמות החוכמה.
יופי. So we're going to do a few passes through it, okay? So it's not just today. We're going to go through it over several sessions because it warrants it. It warrants a whole semester to itself, really, and a whole life and a whole lifetimes. It's probably, the most common sutra in our tradition. It belongs to the Prajnaparamita collection of Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, belonging to the second turning of the wheel, which is the definitive presentation of emptiness. But it's, it's sort of long enough to convey the whole story, but short enough to remember. It's a really powerful sutra. And so if you were to choose any sutra to memorize, this would be a really good one to memorize in any language. So, the Heart Sutra has the elements of a sutra. So we want to go back to, we know what a sutra is generally, but what is a sutra? And to be a sutra, it's something that is either words spoken by the Buddha, words blessed by the Buddha, or words permitted by the Buddha. And in this sutra, it has elements of all three. So it has words that were spoken, words that were blessed, and words that were permitted by the Buddha, all within this same sutra. And this sutra is very much of the Mahayana. So despite being mainly about emptiness, the point is bodhicitta and full enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it's not talking about emptiness going towards nirvana only. It's talking about emptiness combined with bodhicitta, renunciation, etc., leading to full, complete enlightenment. So just for the context, to really have it clear in your mind, this text belongs to the second turning of the wheel, which means from our perspective, it's definitive. Yeah, it's a definitive sutra on emptiness. Despite being mainly about emptiness, it's a Mahayana sutra. So, the first turning of the wheel was mainly taught in, Pali, and the second and third turning of the wheel were mainly taught in Sanskrit or, things similar to it. There's all sorts of historical ideas about why the first turning was the most widely known and the second and third turnings took a while to reveal themselves, and et cetera, et cetera. Lots of interesting history around that. I think for us to ask ourselves, is it useful, is the main thing. And is it powerful? And I think that it's both of those things. And many great meditators have achieved realization on the basis of this sutra and what it contains. So traditionally, we would do what's called a word commentary, which for the Heart Sutra. We don't necessarily do word commentaries for every single teaching there is. But this is a case where every single word of the sutra is packed with meaning and levels and depth. So the word thus, I have heard. So, when my teacher teaches it takes usually, anywhere from a weekend course to a couple of weeks to go through every single word. And I'm going to go through some of the words very specifically that I think are the most significant for your work, and some of the sections that are the most relatable. So we're going to do a whole session just on form is empty, emptiness is form, that section. So if you're wanting to read ahead, there's some commentary on that section, just, a few pages onward. But we'll do a whole session on form is empty, emptiness is form. Today, I just thought to kind of introduce some of the main themes so that we kind of wrap our head around the structure of it. And this isn't the first time that we've looked at the Heart Sutra, but we didn't give it a lot of airtime the first time that we did it. It was more just kind of to know that it exists and to touch base with it. So, so starting at the very beginning, what's being discussed here, one of the reasons why this is such an important and powerful sutra is that it has what are called the 5 excellences. It's the 5 excellences, okay? And the excellences in no particular order are, 1, it is the excellent teaching, meaning it's teaching on emptiness. It's cutting straight to the core of the problem. Yeah, so the excellent teaching. Then we have the excellent teacher and the excellent assembly described in these first sections here. So, thus did I hear at one time. Thus did I hear at one time. This first sentence, these are words that are permitted by the Buddha that were added after the fact. And the I is relating to the perfect teacher, bless this whole scenario. So within the Heart Sutra, the Buddha actually speaks very little. The main people having a discussion are Avalokiteshvara and Shariputra. And they're having kind of a elder student, younger student dialogue that the Buddha is bearing witness to. But the fact that the Buddha is bearing witness to it and then validates and confirms it shows us that this is, it has one of these excellences of the excellent teacher being present. So it's accurate, the main thing being. What's significant to me here is that despite the Buddha being the Buddha, he's not needing to assert himself as the teacher of this wisdom, showing he's not the only one that gets to understand this wisdom. Does it make sense? That this isn't wisdom owned by the Buddha, the exclusive property of the Buddha. This is wisdom revealed by any number of great meditators and practitioners through their own experience. When we're looking at it, I think that it's good to take a step back and ask ourselves, how do we help some of these profound comings together occur? How do we create these 5 excellences, even in their imperfect, worldly, degenerate time form, by modeling these kind of 3 archetypal figures, the perfected teacher, the senior student, and the junior student, and the dialogue and the observation process is just something interesting to sit with. So the other excellent here is the dwelling on massive vulture's mountain is related to the excellent place or an auspicious place. The massive vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, if you've ever been there, it's actually quite a small space. Not a lot of people would fit on that mountaintop. So if you've been there, you think, wow, there was a great assembly. Obviously. Obviously, some of them could levitate, some of them were disembodied, some of them whatever. So it was a great assembly, but not all of them had to have bodies because it's a tiny spot up there. But it was an auspicious location and an auspicious or excellent assembly, meaning that the people that were watching the dialogue were ready to hear it. The people watching the dialogue between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara were ready to bear witness to this process, and it moved them all forward in their practice. There was probably multiple times when the Buddha taught this same content, or his senior students taught this same content, and only a few people understood and only a few people developed as a result of it, and the rest of them were just planting seeds for the future, but it wasn't yet time. This was an excellent assembly and an excellent time because the audience was ready. So excellent time also relates to the Buddha being present, physically present in his supreme form, and the fact that when the Buddha is present in this way, it shows that the merit of sentient beings has a level of receptivity that's really significant. And the Buddha is able to teach and communicate in any language, in any way, to all realms, to all beings simultaneously. So, it was really these 5 excellences. It's really like all of the conditions came together for this beautiful moment in time. Even though it wasn't the only moment in time, these things were taught and revealed. This particular time, this particular coming together is significant and then worth us repeating in a way to ride the coattails of the energy of it, to progress along our own path quicker because of it. to inspire us because of it. Okay, so, you know, thus did I hear at one time. This is the, you know, words permitted by the Buddha. And it continues to be words permitted by the Buddha until we get to the dialogue on the third section there. So the Bhagawan, meaning the Buddha, was dwelling en masse of Vulture's Mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. So the Bhagawan, the Buddha, was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena, meaning he was looking at the bases. He was looking at the valid basis, the categories of phenomena, aggregates, elements, sources, etc. He was observing the base and coming to the conclusion of its emptiness. So profound perception, the profound refers to emptiness. Perception relates to it being direct and non-conceptual. Does that make sense? So that's what he was up to while the whole scene was playing out. Yeah, so the Buddha was meditating on emptiness, and then they were just chatting. Yeah. Now, of course, because he's a Buddha, he can be aware of the ultimate and aware of the relatives simultaneously. So the fact that he was meditating, he could still also hear the conversation. Okay, so just that first paragraph. Is it clear, the first paragraph? The scene, what it's indicating, what a sutra is, why it's excellent. Yeah, that bit's, yeah, clear enough? Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, Arya Avalokiteshvara. Okay, so he's a Bodhisattva, he's a great being, and he's not just a Bodhisattva great being, he is an Arya, meaning he's realized emptiness directly himself. Avalokiteshvara, referring to Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion. Now at this point, you should stop and say, wait, isn't Avalokiteshvara a Buddha? Why is it saying Bodhisattva? That should be the question, right? Wait a minute. And indeed, he is a Buddha, but he is showing the aspects of being a Bodhisattva for the purpose of this teaching. So just like in the 12 deeds of the Buddha, you know, the Buddha shows the aspect of being a prince and being married and having kids and then leaving the life and then practicing as an ascetic and going, you know, through all these processes and then becoming enlightened. From the Mahayana perspective, he was already a Buddha, but he was displaying these activities in order to be relatable, in order to show us something, yeah, in order to convey the way in which we need to practice. So similarly, Avalokiteshvara, he could just as easily be the one meditating in equipoise, and Buddha Shakyamuni could take the aspect of being a bodhisattva, but here he's choosing to show the aspect of still being in training, because that's a useful process for the rest of us to bear witness to. Yeah, and this is something that we're always trying to encourage in Buddhist circles of, it's not enough to just have one amazing teacher. You need less amazing teachers, you need senior students, you need peers, and you need people that don't know as much as you. Because that whole coming together of community enriches us all. You know, without people that didn't know and understand as much as you, would you be forced to clarify and articulate certain things without them? If there weren't people just 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, would you feel like the whole path was possible if you were only around the most enlightened, the most glorious? Say human spirit was led by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That would be so amazing, and it would be great. And it would be very easy to think everything he says is wonderful and amazing, but that's him. What can we possibly do? Us ordinary people with ordinary problems and ordinary families and ordinary this and that. There could be that kind of distancing feeling of, is the path really possible for everyone, or is it only a special kind of being that can do it? Yeah, so in Buddhist circles, you're going to see a lot of this trying to empower many levels of teacher, yeah, and trying to bring us all to the point where we live in that place of being both a student and a teacher all the time, because that is the richest place of practice, is if we're always both a teacher and a student. Yeah. And to say I'm only one and not the other means that your path is somewhat delayed and somewhat less fleshed out. Do you think? If you think, oh, I'm only a student, but you never take responsibility and you never kind of show up with the level of knowledge and wisdom you already have, does it really integrate? You know, or if you think you're only a teacher and then you don't have anything to learn, is there any kind of receptivity or any kind of progress? So it's an interesting premise. You don't have to agree with me, but just to sit with, do you think the most functional way to practice is if you're simultaneously, in some context, the teacher, in some context, the student? Okay, so food for thought. Please read the Heart Sutra in whichever language you like at least once before our next session, just so it's a little bit clearer the sections, because when I refer to different pieces, it'll be easier if you have heard it before a few more times. Some of you probably read it all the time, but just in case it's newish to some of you, please do read it again. And we'll come back to it next week. Okay, so just take a minute and reconnect and allow the thoughts that we've had to settle and dedicate them.